Alright, so this is going to be part 2 of What If Deku Was Iron Joe. So with that being said, I gotta say a few things. You guys really seem to like this series, and I really do too. It's based off of Plunder, which I told you guys in the last video to go and watch. I feel like it's a really good anime, at least this season, and if you have nothing better to do since you know what's been happening, I think it's a good opportunity to go and watch it. So before we get into the story, I guess I should clarify a few things. That being how his number goes up, because I saw like a few people were confused by that. So his number, Deku's number, goes up by his convictions and whether or not he believes in them or sticks by them. So what I mean by that is his beliefs, right? If he stands by his beliefs, his number goes up. But if he goes back on them, then he loses a number. So the example I gave in the last episode or part was lying and telling the truth. If he told the truth, his number would go up. If he told a lie, his number would go down. But that's not really the only way he would, make his number increase. It would also happen when he would help people in really any way. I think there are a few major kind of convictions he would have. One would, never tell a lie. Another would be a hero or become a hero. Another one would be help people, do good, and have good grades. I would say those are the really big ones that he would have. So every time he would train, that would go with his conviction of becoming a hero, so his number would go up. Every time he would help someone, that would also probably go up with both convictions, so that might increase it by 2. Good grades, get good grades, you go up, and things like that. There could be many different convictions he could have. I just came up with a few. If you guys want, you guys can tell me a few convictions that Deku could have in this series, so that it could help him lose, or not really lose, help him gain more points or lose points, depending on the situation and things like that. So in the last part, we just got done with the kind of entry exam, but Deku didn't really take the entry exam. He took the recommendation kind of exam. And in this, Yuarashi actually stays in UA instead of going to UA's rival school. So we would start off right after, like a week after, so they would get on their first day of UA. So Deku would step into class, and I would say he's pretty early, more than someone like that or Ida, or around the same time that Ida would come, and I think it'd be one of the first ones to come through with Ida. So also I said that Deku was the same side as Bakugo, so instead of being 5'5", I think Deku was, at least from myself in the comment, he's gonna be around 5'8", so the same height as Bakugo. Okay, so Deku would see Ida, and this is where they would introduce each other, and they would ask, are you in class 1A? And Deku would be yes. Well, he would say yes, and he would say his name was Izuku Midoriya, and this is where Ida would say, I'm Tenya Ida. So after this, they would have a pretty good impression of each other, and this is where he would ask him whether or not he was in the kind of exam, the entry exam, because he doesn't remember seeing him. This is what Ida would ask him, and Deku would say, oh no, I didn't take the entry exam, I took the recommendation. And this is where Ida's like, oh, you took the recommendation? You must have a really powerful quirk. What is it? It's called Iron Conviction. And he would show him the number on his hand. Basically, I would believe it was around 14,000 the last time we shown it. And he would say that every time he stands by one of his conviction, his number goes up. So again, his number would go up right there since he did tell the truth. So after that, he would explain a little bit more of his quirk, saying that he's able to create iron and iron objects with his power, but he's not able to manipulate the iron in the surrounding area. So the way that his power works, I heard there isn't too much to say that there's a limit on how much iron he could create. In the manga, I have seen him create lots of things, but I won't say too much because I don't want to spoil it. As well as, I want you guys to see it for yourself when it's animated, or if you go read the manga. So, there's gonna be a lot of iron. Just say. So we could say that it's either endless within that, or I guess not endless, enough to fill in the range that he has, or it really depends on his number. So yeah. After a bit, this is where Bakugo would come in, and he would be like, Izuku, you got it in? Or you got in? And this is where Deku would be like, yeah, of course. And this is where he would meet Ida. So Bakugo isn't as arrogant as he was in the anime, since he did have somewhat of a rival, but he is a little bit still arrogant. And this is where Ida would introduce himself first, because I don't think Bakugo would. And this is where he would say, I'm Tenya Ida, we're going to be fellow classmates. What's your name? And Bakugo would be like, oh, it's Katsuki Bakugo, and not really say too much of it, and kind of sit down, right? This is where he would kind of put his feet on the table, and Bakugo would, or Ida would yell at Bakugo saying that he should put his feet down. And this is where Deku would agree with Ida and tell him the same thing. Bakugo would eventually listen, and this is where the rest of Class 1A would come in, or start coming in, with Uraraka as well. So I would say that the person who gets kicked out in this series is going to be Mineta. I know I didn't really say who would get out, but it seems like he'd be the logical person to get out. I would say that he would be in Class 1B, to be honest. Even just because his quirk is still pretty useful in some scenarios. So in this one, I don't think Uraraka would introduce herself to that group. Not yet, at least. Basically, she has no real reason to go up to those 3 individuals, because she hasn't met them in the past like she did in the anime, where she was saved by Deku, but also saw him beforehand when he was about to trip. So it's gonna be a little bit different. After a bit, this is where Aizawa would come in and basically talk about how they're going to do a quirk assessment and not going to orientation, to see if the students actually are worthy of being in Class 1A. So after a bit, he would tell them to go change to their PE uniforms and meet him in the field. After a bit, they would get out there, and this is where they would do the first couple of assessments, I guess. So just like in canon, Bakugo was the one who got first place in the entry exam, and this basically makes or I actually forgot one important detail, and that is Yuarshi. Yuarshi would have met Deku in the classroom and would have introduced himself and be really excited, and this would get Bakugo kind of a little bit annoyed because of his personality a little bit, and Ida would be kind of taken back by it, not really knowing what to say in this scenario. But Deku knows Yuarshi a bit and is pretty calm about it. So let's get back to what I was saying beforehand. So Bakugo would go up and throw the ball normally without using his quirk, which would get around 70 meters, and then this is where he would use his quirk after Aizawa would tell him to do so, and he would get around 700 meters, I believe, somewhere around there. And this is where Aizawa would explain that because you weren't able to use your quirks beforehand, you weren't able to really see the big difference it could make. So we would get to the kind of other kind of exams, basically going through the different trials I guess. So the first one would be the kind of race, or the 20-meter dash, I think it was. So Deku would get a pretty impressive score, since he isn't like he's like at superhuman levels of speed, but he's not like major. I think he'd be around the same speed as Ida without reciprocal burst. So he would get pretty much like first or not first. I think he would get like around 3rd place, the same time as, well, everyone else. Or he would get, I think the first place would go to Yuarshi because of his wind power. The next would go to either Ida or Todoroki, and then Deku would be in 4th. So after a bit, we would get to the strength test, and I think Deku would do it pretty well in this one as well. I think he would actually beat Shoji, which I believe got like 5 or 1500 kilograms on their kind of strength test. I think Deku would be easily able to beat this, at least by another 500, so 2000 kilograms. Yeah, I believe that'd be the right amount. So he would get first place in that. The side decides, it pretty much, it's kind of a little bit weird on who would win that. But I think it would be Deku as well, since it'd be kind of hard to push yourself back and forth with wind, and the same thing with ice. And he is the most physically fit there, just in overall, and not like specialized in any particular area. So he'd be pretty good there. After this, let's just say it would get to the ball throw. So everyone would do their kind of normal ball throw, and this is where Deku's up. So instead of being able, he can't really make like machines or really anything like that. He can only make iron. So what he would do is that he would make like a bat. So he would toss the ball into the air and then hit it with his metal or his iron bat. And keep in mind that he does have superhuman levels of strength. So being able to hit it with a full like solid iron bat, he would make it go pretty far. So I believe like the furthest, I'm not sure actually. So the farthest a baseball has been hit, or the longest home run was around 700 feet. So if you translate that to meters, it's around 200 and 10 feet or 213 kind of meters. So we're gonna basically multiply that by 10 and say that he got over 2,130 meters. So this is a very impressive score, beating out Bakugo by around nearly triple, I would say, if I get the math right. So after this, Uraraka would get her score, and she would get first, obviously, with her score of infinity. Deku would get second, so overall he got a pretty good score. He's in the top 3 definitely in terms of strength and things like that. So everything after that would happen normally, with no one really getting kicked out, because I believe Deku would really stand up for them. So anyone who would be in that situation would get, or would kind of stay in Class 1A because of Deku. At the same time, All Might is watching them perform, and he does see them as impressive class of students this year. So I'm not sure if I want Deku to have one for all. It kind of takes away from the purpose of the story, as well as, well, his convictions, I guess. So if you guys wanted to have one for all, I guess so, but I really don't want to. But I don't know. I might not do it. I might just keep him as he is now, because it really does take away from the story if you give him one for all in every what if. So yeah. After this would be the test with, I guess not test, but the assignment with All Might, where he would be their combat instructor, and he would tell them that they're going to do a special assignment, and that's going to be the heroes versus villains, wherein one side plays the villains and the other does the heroes. So it would be the same the same teams as it was in canon, that being Bakugo and Ida versus Deku and Uraraka. So they would do similar to how they would in canon, where he would inspect the kind of mapping of the building, and when they would go inside, he would tell Uraraka to let him handle with Bakugo, and as well as basically him being the kind of powerhouse, while she could be the kind of support or utility, really, because Deku is not really a power type, but he's more offensive, I would say. So after this, Bakugo, he wouldn't really listen to Ida too much. He would a little bit more than in canon, since he isn't as arrogant and he doesn't have that kind of reason to be very angry at Deku like he does in canon. So he doesn't stray too far away from Ida. So I would say he would go probably a floor below him and not really all the way to the bottom like he does in canon. So when they meet, when they finally get to the second to the top floor, this is where they would meet Bakugo. So Deku would tell Uraraka to basically go upstairs while he fights Bakugo, and Bakugo is waiting for this fight because they didn't really have too many opportunities to do so because of Deku's kind of personality and not really wanting to fight if unnecessary. So Deku would get into his stance because at this point he would have learned some kind of fighting styles. I think he would be more I think he's a little closer to Jail's kind of personality, and he does know some military kind of techniques, mostly to take down people, I would say. So he would create iron gloves or iron kind of gauntlets or something similar to that to make his punches a little bit harder to actually affect, as well as giving him some protection from the explosions because, like I said before, his conviction makes his iron stronger, right? So Bakugo does have his own kind of will and things like that, similar to that of Deku in this. So it's not like a complete kind of stomp, right, in terms of will. So they would kind of rush that. Mostly Bakugo would rush towards Deku, and he would basically dodge the first hit and grab him by the neck while pushing him down and kind of holding his arm. Bakugo would use his other hand to basically create an explosion at the ground to push him upwards, sending Deku into the ceiling, kind of hitting the ceiling and crashing down. After this, Bakugo would come up from the ground after kind of getting his arm back, or kind of rubbing his arm because what Deku did was pretty, strong and did hurt him a bit. So Bakugo would do something similar, but instead he would actually create smoke using his explosions to blind Deku for a bit, which does work, giving him a few shots to the stomach, knocking Deku a bit back. This is where Deku would basically create kind of spikes into his shoes, kind of clamping down into the ground so he doesn't lose balance. And this is where he would basically, like let's say that he was about to fall over, but then he did the spike things and he's basically swinging his head forward, and this actually headbutts Bakugo in the face. This knocks Bakugo back a bit, and once Deku has his balance back, he runs towards Bakugo, pushing him against a wall, and this is where he creates kind of iron chains, not chains, but kind of I guess clamps that would basically pin Bakugo to the wall, and this is where he would wrap the tape around him, and this is where he would actually get him out of the kind of test. This is where he would go upstairs trying to help out Uraraka. So in this case, the floor would have been a little bit crumbled or a little bit unstable since Bakugo and Deku's fight was literally underneath them. So it's a little bit unstable, as well as let's say that Ida is basically running around with the bomb and not letting her really touch it. So what Deku does is that he crumbles the floor a bit more, but he puts support underneath Uraraka to basically help with her kind of ability, right? Or help her not fall while losing a lot of traction for let's say Ida, right? So he makes kind of the rebar into the ground, kind of to help the places where Uraraka's standing be more secure. So with Ida's kind of floor being more and more destroyed, and he's not really able to go anywhere, so he's basically backed into a corner, and this is where he would use his jets to kind of jump into the air and kind of get to the other side. This is where Deku would be ready, and he would toss a giant piece of iron towards Ida, basically knocking him out and getting the win on the bomb after securing it with some iron. So after this, they would be considered the winner and they would get pretty much praised by this. So after a bit, I don't know, I guess we could end it here actually. So yeah, this is gonna be the end of the video. Remember, if you liked the video, give it a like. If you want to see more of my content, please subscribe. And if you made it to the end of the video, please comment down CS so I know that you made it to the end of the video and that you support the channel. So with that being said, this is gonna be the end of the video. So yeah.